Ecclesiastes, chapter 3, verses 1 through 13. There is a time for everything, and a season for every activity under the heavens. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to uproot. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to tear down and a time to build. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to scatter stones and a time to gather them. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to search and a time to give up. A time to keep and a time to throw away. A time to tear and a time to mend. A time to be silent and a time to speak. A time to love and a time to hate. A time for war and a time for peace. What do workers gain from their toil? I have seen the burden of God has laid on the human race. He has made everything beautiful in its time. He has also set eternity in the human heart. Yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. I know that there is nothing better for people than to be happy and to do good while they live, that each of them may eat and drink and find satisfaction in all their toil. This is the gift of God.
Good morning. I don't like messy rooms. You wouldn't have been able to tell this from my room growing up, but now I just have this thing where I just don't like messy rooms. Anybody else with me? Okay, there's a few of us. Anybody else that doesn't care if the room's a mess? You can just tune out the next 40 minutes or so. Yeah. Now, I have this thing. I don't like messy rooms. If I come into a room and it's messy, I have this urge, this desire to fix it. I want to organize and clean and put away and take care of. I'm a dad of a toddler. And so if you've been a parent of a toddler, you know that this is a losing battle. I'll come home from lunch, or for lunch, which I do every day. I come home for lunch and I'll walk into our living room, dining room area, and Parker will have torn through the living room, dining room area, and there will be toys all over the place. There will be tunnels that stretch through. There will be a trampoline that used to have stuff in it, now all the stuff is all over. There will be a stuffed animal massacre that will be all over the place. Snacks hidden in faraway places, and I come into that room and I just feel it inside of me. I gotta fix it. And so he's up in his high chair, which means he can't do any more damage. And so I get down and I start picking up and cleaning up, and I'm a whirlwind of activity, picking up and cleaning up and throwing away and moving and organizing and storing, thinking this time will be the right time. And I'll get it all put away, and Parker will stand back and go, "Dad, I don't want to play with anything ever again. Just, wow." A couple hours later, I'll come home from work and it'll be all out again. And so I'm left asking myself this question. The question is, what am I working for? You ever had that feeling of kind of hopelessness? This is pointless. Why pick it up if he's just going to make a mess again? Yeah, it's meaningless, you might say. We started last week studying Ecclesiastes. Everybody say Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes. By the time we get done, you're going to be able to say that without any hesitation. Right? Ecclesiastes. And Ecclesiastes is an interesting book written by Solomon, part of the wisdom literature. He's gathering people together at the end of his life saying, "Guys, this is what I've learned. And I've reflected over my life and my experiences. This is what I've got." And he starts off really hope-filled and encouraging, doesn't he? Meaningless. Meaningless. Everything is meaningless. Some translations have it as vanity of vanities. Everything is vanity. Pointless. What's the point? Last week we talked about wealth and how Solomon approached that idea of abundance and luxury and pleasure and how chasing after that ultimately is kind of pointless, but God has given us all things to enjoy, and so we enjoy it not because of what it is, but because of who gave it to us. And so today we're going to transition from wealth to another W, because that's what pastors do. We start everything with the same letter. And we're going to talk about work. Everybody say work. 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 Thank you, whoever that was back there. Work. So we're going to be in Ecclesiastes chapter 3, and I'm going to start with verse 9. Now, typically when I preach, we go through books, we go through them in sequence, right? From chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. Ecclesiastes isn't really written that way. It focuses more on these themes. And so what I'm going to do, instead of going 1, 2, 3, is kind of jump around and find where Solomon talks about these themes and see what wisdom we can pull from that. Is that okay? I have your permission to do that? Good. Good. Ecclesiastes chapter 3. We're going to start with verse 9. Now, Angela did a great job reading 3, that famous section 1 through 8. There's a time for everything and a season for every activity under heaven. You guys remember the song? For everything, turn, turn, turn. Some of you don't, that's okay. Verse 9 is where we're going to be. Ecclesiastes 3, verse 9. Solomon writes, "What does the worker gain from his toil? I've seen the burden that God has laid on men. He's made everything beautiful in its time. He's also set eternity in the hearts of men. They cannot fathom what God has done from beginning to end. I know that there's nothing better for men than to be happy and do good while they live, that everyone may eat and drink and find satisfaction in all his toil. This is the gift of God." Now, he writes this and he says, look, I understand about work, about this desire to go do something. I have that desire sometimes. If I'm just forced to just sit and not do anything, it drives me nuts. Anybody else like that? You have to get up and do something. Now, some of you might think, oh, not me. I'm doing stuff all the time. I love to just sit. I have this thing where I think that too, and then after the first 2 days, I got to go do something. And so Solomon says, I understand God's placed this burden in the hearts of man. They long for a better day. They yearn for things to be put together and fixed. They want things to be right. He says, God makes all things beautiful in their time, and He set heaven, He set eternity in the hearts of men. See, that's our DNA, right? We've got this working, this image of God working within us that says, I see this world, and as good as it is, as beautiful as it is, I can tell there's something not quite right. There's people who are paralyzed in their 20s. And there's kids with cancer, and there's disasters taking out nations year after year after year. I see brothers shooting each other. I see people hurting one another. I see marriages ending. God, I see this beautiful world, but there's something within me that says this isn't right. Solomon says God has set eternity in our hearts. He's put heaven in here, and so we're not of this world. And so when we see the brokenness, we say that's not right. It needs to be picked up. It needs to be fixed. I got to do something about this. I long for heaven, for a better day, for a proper place. We have this desire to work and to make things good. And I think it started back with Adam and Eve. You guys are familiar with them. Genesis. God creates the first man, first woman. And He tells them, here's what I want you to do, guys. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to take your Bibles. I want you to go to the raccoons. And I want you to explain to them the gospel. No, that's not what He said. Some of you are like, I missed that part. Second hesitation? No, He said, I want you to go. And when Adam was first created, He said, Adam, I want you to help me out. I want you to go name the animals. help provide some order. Okay? Then Eve comes along and God says, okay, both of you, I want you to go, I want you to cultivate the ground. Work the garden. Okay? I find it interesting because Adam and Eve's mandate had absolutely nothing to do with evangelism as we see it. Had everything to do with physical work. And it's funny because a lot of times we think that work and spiritual work are on two different planes. But God seems to combine them a little bit. See, God cares for the physical as well as the spiritual. Some of us, we divvy out our lives and we say, okay, God is over here. Our songs, our prayers, our scriptures, our whatevers. But in real life, we've got the work and the bills and the sweat and the toil. Over here, we've got the heavenly realm. And over here, we've got the groan and the grind of every day. Ugh. And yet God is intimately aware and involved and concerned with both. With the temporal, the temporary, the things that don't last forever, and the eternal, the spiritual, the things that are hard to put in a box. He cares about both. Now, why is that? Well, I'm glad I asked. Because they're two parts of the same thing. Two parts of one whole. See, you can't get to eternity without going through this. You need this to get to that. Without this, you're not getting there. And without that, this is kind of pointless. Think of it this way. How many people have ever seen a space shuttle launch? Or at least you can picture one in your head, right? Space shuttle launch. Pretend you're at NASA, you're watching this thing on the screens or outside. Of course, you got to be several miles away. But you're watching it and you see this tiny little space shuttle. And then this massive rocket. And the tiny little space shuttle is hitched onto it. And when they say 3, 2, 1, blast off. Right? You guys are picturing this in your head. The ignition hits, the fuel is burned, and it takes so much energy to get that all up off the ground. And then what happens is the rocket and the space shuttle, they get past their point of no return, they get past the Earth's atmosphere, and the big rocket, what does it do? It separates and drops away, and the space shuttle then is launched out into space. See, without the rocket, the space shuttle doesn't leave the ground. And without the space shuttle, the rocket is just burned up and then falls down. They need each other. There's something incredible between real life and eternity. Between the physical and the spiritual. And a lot of times, I know how it is, a lot of times we preachers, we're guilty of this. We focus on this over here, right? And we forget about this, that God somehow just isn't involved, or this doesn't matter as much, or it's not important. But the fact of the matter is, both matter. Solomon touches on that. He says, I see there's nothing better than for a man to eat and drink and enjoy the work of his hands. Be satisfied in his toil. Journalist Sue Boland, who works with Probe Ministries, she said this. She said, in meeting the legitimate physical, temporal needs of people, our work serves people. And people have eternal value because God loves us and made us in His image. So if you're thinking to yourself, well, which occupation is more holy? An electrician or a missionary in sub-Saharan Africa? The answer is yes. If you ask yourself, well, which occupation is more important to God? An accountant or a Bible translator in Zimbabwe? The answer is yes. See, there's something about helping people, serving people that is honoring to God. My job is no less important than yours. Also something that preachers don't always admit. But there's something important that happens when we serve each other. It shows that we love each other and we value God's image. I'm going to take a drink because I've been talking for a while. Get kind of dry. Speaking of drink, this is Fishy. That's his name. Creative, I know. Don't make fun of it. My son named him. You make fun of him, I'll take you out. Just kidding. This is Fishy. Fishy's been with us for about a year now. He's a betta fish, all by himself in that tank. Fishy's existence is pretty simple. He swims this way, and sometimes he'll swim this way. Occasionally, he'll swim down, and many times, he'll swim back up. The end. That's Fishy's life. Can you imagine Fishy's perspective? All right, what are we going to do today? I think I'll see what the plant's up to. So he swims over to this blue spiky thing that's not really even a plant. Yep, still there. I wonder what the salmon-colored thing is doing. Oh, he swims over this way. Yep, still there. Let's see if I can read today. So he swims in front of this sign that says no cats. He swims in front of this sign and goes, nope, can't read. And so he just keeps swimming. Just keeps swimming, swimming, swimming. Round and round in circles. He lives in this bowl. He eats in this bowl. He sleeps in this bowl. He defecates in this bowl. He does everything in this bowl. He's the only fish in this bowl. And yet something interesting, Fishy's existence depends on a hand from above. Without that hand from above, he wouldn't have food for the day. Without that hand from above, when his world gets clouded and murky because he made a mess of it, he'd never be able to get cleaned up. He is utterly and completely dependent on the hand from above for his very existence. See, without God, life is meaningless. Swimming in circles. Now, we try to give it some meaning. We say, well, I have things I need to do. I need to check the blue plant. I need to check the salmon-colored plant. I need to read the sign. Swim up, swim down, swim left, swim right. I have things to do today. And yet, to someone with a grander perspective, it seems kind of trivial. Kind of pointless. But if he were to recognize his utter dependence on a being far greater than himself, far greater than his world, then suddenly he has more questions than answers. Suddenly his little tank no longer contains the real world. It's just a part of the real world. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. Ecclesiastes, I'm going to actually be in chapter 2 now. I know I told you I was going to jump all over. I don't lie, but I try not to anyway. So Solomon is writing about work. He's writing about toil. Solomon, who was a king, who was in charge of lots of things, building projects and all sorts of things. He knew what work was about. He knew what pleasure was about, as we talked last week. He gets to Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verse 17, and he starts it with this cheery note. So I hated life. Thanks for that. He says, so I hated life, 2:17, because the work that is done under the sun was grievous to me. All of it is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. I hated all the things I had toiled for under the sun because I must leave them to someone who comes after me. And who knows whether he will be a wise man or a fool. Yet he will have control over all the work in which I poured my effort and skill under the sun. This too is meaningless. So my heart began to despair over all my toilsome labor under the sun. For a man may do his work with wisdom and knowledge and skill, and then he must leave all he owns to someone who has not worked for it. This too is meaningless and a great misfortune. What does a man get for all the toil and anxious striving with which he labors under the sun? All his days his work is pain and grief. Even at night his mind does not rest. This too is meaningless. Now you heard a couple phrases repeated in that, right? Meaningless, which we've talked about. You also heard the phrase under the sun. Did we say under the sun? Under the sun. Now that's a simple way of saying all of life that he knew under the sun. Everything that happens here on planet Earth. All the experiences of human life. It seems to be meaningless. Pointless. You work so hard. You work so hard trying to accomplish, trying to get it done, trying to accomplish what you think will change the world, will change everything. Things are going to be better from this point on, and then it's over. Is it too late to jump on the Cubs bandwagon? Too late? Missed my time? It's funny because, right, 108 years. 108 years. That's a long time. 108 years. Everybody else was looking at it. I figured I might. 108 years is a long time to do anything. And so there's this angst, this yearning. Let's get it done. Let's work for it. Let's accomplish what's never been accomplished. Let's do it. And then you know what they're going to talk about next year? We got to do it again. Got to do it again. All this buildup, all this excitement, all this groaning about the curses. And you know what they're going to talk about next year? Got to do it again. Now, I don't mean to short circuit the celebration. But it leads to my point. Right? Dave Ramsey put it this way. He said, our legacy is so important. What we teach our kids and those who come after us is so important. He says there's going to come a day when I'm not going to be able to do my job anymore. And so I'm going to have to hand the reins of this million-dollar company, this multi-million-dollar company with over 600 employees and all of their life, over to somebody else, to my kids, to those who are coming next. And he says, so you better understand that my kids are going to have a master in finance. They're going to know how to handle things. Imagine this. Imagine you bake a cake. You bake a cake, you put a lot of work into it. It takes you all day. You not only bake the cake, you decorate the cake. It's beautiful. You pipe it with all your little icing and things. I watch Cake Boss, that's a thing. You spend all this time building this work of art. Now imagine you hand it to some guy to load into the truck. And he says, all right, boss, give it here. Yeah, okay. You just wouldn't do that. But you don't have that option in life, right? You don't have the option of saying, this is what's going to happen, for sure, after I'm done. You can fill out a will, you can try and organize things as best you can, and that will be followed to a certain extent, but you can't say what's going to happen down the road. You just swim in circles, looking for meaning, purpose. Doesn't mean you don't work with passion, doesn't mean you don't do it, but you just need to figure out what the purpose is. If it's just to accomplish stuff, then that's not going to take you anywhere. You've got to have something, some reason. Sue Boland, as I mentioned, said that God doesn't want us to do holy things. He wants us to be holy people. Did you catch that? God doesn't want us to do holy things. He wants us to be holy people. It's bigger than just accomplishment. Pastor Rick Warren said this in Purpose-Driven Life. He says, work becomes worship when you dedicate it to God and perform it with an awareness of His presence. Work becomes worship when you dedicate it to God and perform it with an awareness of His presence. Essentially, it's doing it recognizing that God is there. I'm going to run to Ephesians. You don't have to. Ephesians. Paul actually talks about this. He instructs slaves in Ephesus, but I believe this applies to anybody who does any sort of work. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 5. He says, slaves, obey your earthly masters with respect and fear and with sincerity of heart, just as you would obey Christ. Obey them not only to win their favor when their eye is on you, but like slaves of Christ, doing the will of God from your heart. Serve wholeheartedly, as if you were serving the Lord, not men, because you know that the Lord will reward everyone for whatever good he does, whether he is slave or free. Work as though you're working for the Lord. When we went to Catalyst, we actually heard a guy by the name of Travis Boersma speak. Travis is the owner CEO of Dutch Brothers Coffee, more of a West Coast thing, so you might not be familiar with it. But Travis got the opportunity to be on a show called Undercover Boss. Anybody seen the show Undercover Boss? Okay. The premise of the show is you take the president, the CEO, the owner, whomever, and they will disguise themselves, go and work in some of the lower ranking jobs of their company, and they're going to test things out. They're going to meet people who actually do stuff in the trenches and check out their company that way. So I got home from Catalyst and I thought, I'm going to check this episode out. And I'm flipping through and trying to find it on Netflix. And I come across a different episode, but it was the CEO and president of United Van Lines, which is the company that my dad works for. So I thought, well, this will be kind of cool. So I start watching. And the guy, he goes and he spends one day and he's working with a married couple. Their job is to pack and load things. He goes and he works with a driver who's going to worry about loading things into the truck. He goes and he works in the warehouse with some 20-something kid who really doesn't want to be there. He goes and he works, he sends his wife actually to work in the office with a customer service agent. And then when the show's all done, everything's all complete, they have no idea that they've spent this time with the CEO of the company. At the end, they're called in for a meeting to review how this intern did, this new guy that you helped out. They come into this office, they sit down at a desk, and the CEO walks in and he says, "Do you know who I am?" I said, "No. I'm the CEO and founder, owner of whatever company it is." And they're shocked. Some are amazed. Some can't believe it. They're just in awe that they're even in the presence of this person. Others are scared to death. Oh no, what did I say? What did I do? And it's interesting because some of the people should be scared. And there was one kid, I knew he was going to get hammered. A 20-something kid in the warehouse who didn't want to be there, cutting corners, taking like 15 smoke breaks in the morning. He's trying to do everything he can not to do anything he can. You know what I mean? And the boss, he sits across from me, he says, I saw what you did, how you handled things, how you tried to just push responsibility off on others. So we're going to help you. We're going to kind of walk you through. We're going to retrain you. And you can tell he's sweating bullets, man. The other people come in, the married couple, and they were so friendly and so helpful and did their job so well. And the husband, he always wanted to be a driver, wanted to have his own truck, go on the road with his wife. And so the CEO said, man, I appreciate the work you guys have been doing. I saw the way you work together and the way you treat the customer, and we're going to do all that we can. We're actually going to pay to put you through driver school, get your CDL, so that you can go on the road. And they're just, wow. That's what Ephesians, that's what Ecclesiastes, the point, the victory, and all the meaninglessness is. Work as though you're working for the Lord. And when you do, it'll be like God is saying, I see you, and I appreciate what you're doing. Because sometimes we do stuff and it's a thankless job. We're at home, we clean up, we do things around the house, he never notices. We come home, we make sacrifices to take care of stuff, and she never says anything. We go to church, we volunteer, we give our time, no one notices. And so it's real easy to just go, screw it. Right? Am I wrong? Mm-hmm. To throw our hands up and say it's meaningless, it's pointless, I'm not going to... I know, I said screw it. It's okay. we get this kind of, I don't care anymore. Right? I've reached my point, I've worked so hard, and I just don't care anymore. If nobody's going to say thank you, if nobody's going to show appreciation, then what's the point? The point is that we're called not to work for that other person. We're called to work as though we are working for the Lord, and He sees it. And He appreciates it. And you know the Lord will reward us who have done it. I got to keep going. Back to Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verse 24 and 25. Solomon says, a man can do nothing better than to eat and drink and find satisfaction in his work. This too I see is from the hand of God. For without Him, who can eat or find enjoyment? Who can eat or find enjoyment? Sue Boland, again, I quoted her several times, says that she says, being happy in our work doesn't depend on our work, it depends on our attitude. Being happy in our work doesn't depend on our work, it depends on our attitude. You can tell one person, go out and pull weeds, and they'll groan and complain, and you'll think it's the worst thing that's ever happened to them. Tell another person to go out and pull weeds. Actually, you don't even have to tell them, because they'll do it on their own because they enjoy it. Tell one person, you need to go and organize that cabinet. And they throw up their hands, they stomp their feet, they find anything that they can possibly do to put off organizing that cabinet. And you tell somebody else, hey, have you taken a look at that cabinet? And 5 minutes later, they'll have it all strewn out, organized, labeled, put in its proper place. Because they just enjoy doing that sort of thing. See, it has nothing to do with the work. It has everything to do with who we are. How we see things. Work in and of itself is not meaningless. It's how we view it that matters. God doesn't want us just to do holy things. He wants us to be holy people. Being happy has nothing to do with what you do. It has everything to do with who you are. I could keep going, but I don't want to go into extra innings. So we're just going to keep rolling. Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 18. Some more talk about this work. Solomon says, I also thought, as for men, God tests them so that they may see that they're like the animals. Man's fate is like that of the animals. The same fate awaits them both. As one dies, so dies the other. All have the same breath. Man has no advantage over the animal. Everything is meaningless. All go to the same place. All come from dust. To dust all return. Who knows if the spirit of man rises upward and if the spirit of the animal goes down into the earth? So I saw that there's nothing better for a man than to enjoy his work, because that is his lot. who can bring him to see what will happen after him. There's going to come a time when it's time for us all to clock out. When our work shift is done. And we don't have any control over it. It'll happen one way or another. And we might get to the end of our life and look back as Solomon did and go, man, what did I work for? Perhaps the better question then is, who did I work for? Was it all about just making me feel good? Because now I feel terrible. It seems kind of a pointless thing. Was it all about making people happy who I never see? Because that's kind of meaningless. Who did I work for? Was I so busy swimming in circles that I didn't see the pointlessness of it? Or did I recognize that I was utterly dependent on a hand from above that I can't quite explain or fully understand? Who did I work for? I want to close with this last quote from Sue Bowman. She said, "We bring glory to God by working industriously, demonstrating what He is like, and serving others by cooperating with God to meet their needs. In serving others, we serve God, and that is why our work matters to God." Work hard, work well, work with God, work for God, and it matters to God. So we come to this table, and we recognize that earlier today, we prayed that God would give us our daily bread. We are utterly dependent on Him for food, for sustenance, for life. So as the communion is passed, I would ask you not only to recognize what Jesus did on the cross, but recognize what God does every moment of every day for you to survive and give thanks. With those who are passing the communion, please come forward at this time. As it's being passed, you can take and hold it, and then we'll all take of the bread.